Welcome, everybody. This is Starting Out Bright, and I am Noreen Savage. Thanks for being here. And we're going to have a great night because Karen Moran is in the house. Thanks, Karen, for being here. And in case we haven't personally met, I just want to tell you who I am and who I'm not. First of all, I am nobody special or official with Bright Line Eating. And the program, though, has done amazing things for me. In fact, today I'm celebrating 35% off. 35% off my top weight of 270 pounds. I had so much to go. In the BMI, you have all these little boxes. I figured it out, and at 270, my normal weight would be like 135. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to celebrate every 5% off. And at some point I'll get to normal. So today I hit 35% off. And what a celebration that is for me, because it's going on 3.5 years. It's not been a quick slide to the goal. It for me has been pound after pound. But where I was, as I said, 270 pounds, lots of things developing, like very sore, painful knee and plantar fasciitis, poor back, just starting to hurt, snoring every night. And when I found Bright Line Eating, it was through a friend on Facebook. And at first I thought, this is just impossible to do 4 bright lines as described in the book by Susan Pierce Thompson, Bright Line Eating, this book right here. But I went out and got it after talking with my friend Lori, and she also suggested that I get in the community. At that time, it was We Eat Bright with Lines, but from there I have found many other online communities, and we have a group too, Starting Out Bright, which is associated with these Zoom chats. So anyway, I got started, and here I am 3.5 years later, but a year into it, I had promised myself that if I lasted a year, I would do what my friend Lori did. I'd post on Facebook. And so when the year was up, I was sitting in that chair behind me, thinking about what am I going to post? What is going to be this message that I bring? I'm a Christian. I felt God saying, Noreen, you can do more than that. You could connect people. And here it was the time of Zooms. We were in the pandemic, July 2020, but never in my wildest dreams did I think at one point I'd be connecting with lovely people all the way from Australia. But that's where we are tonight. Karen, welcome from Australia. Love to have you here, and just welcome. Thanks for
Thank you. It's such a delight. I've got to say, Noreen, and I haven't told you this before, but it's because of this, what you're doing now has been a vital part in my success. So whether or not you know it, you're one leg to my stool of stableness.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear this affirmation, because I pray that all the time. Lord, just send me an affirmation to just validate what I'm doing. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. If it's helped one person on each Zoom, that's been my goal. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because when I was sitting there a year later, after I got started, I went back to my friend Lori, because I had this wild idea that was in me now of what to do, but I didn't know who would come. And so I went back to Lori and I said, Lori, when you posted, and I went and messaged you right away. I said, how many people messaged you? And she said, Noreen, you're the only one. I'm the only one? Are you kidding me? I was shocked. And so since then, I've thought, if we've only touched one, just the one who has ears to hear and eyes to see that night, it could change their life, because it certainly changed mine. And so that is my goal each time, is just for the one who's ready to hear the message that they can change their life. So let's start talking about how this has changed your life, Karen. Where were you? Can you bring us kind of up to speed What brought you into Bright Line Eating? And for those who are here and know Karen already with internal family systems, parts work, believe me, we're going to get into that. But I want to, we got together a little bit, Karen, and you have an incredible story. I want to get into that too, your personal BLE journey. So where were you before you got started?
Well, I can tell you where I was. I was on my bed listening to a podcast, and then I saw the next podcast come up. It was a Hay House podcast, and the title was Bright Line Eating. Now, you'd think I would have clicked on that and listened to it. No, not the sensible type. I went directly to Google and Googled Bright Line Eating, ended up on the Bright Line Eating webpage, did the susceptibility test, and yep, 10 plus, all of my fingers, plus a few. And I went, wow, someone knows me. They asked the right questions and understood me.
Yeah.
And I then went to Audible and bought the book, and listened to the book. Didn't take me very long. Not that long a book, but I listened to it. I think I stayed up late that night to listen to it. And once again, it rang true. But the thing that I knew, it was like coming home, it mentioned parts work. Now, I'd learnt parts work in 2019, and this was late December in 2020. So I was well into parts work. I was using parts work in my daily life as an addiction counsellor. And as soon as I read it, it's like, this is it. This is the one. Now, I have said that many times in my life. I've been on lots of programs and I've succeeded getting the weight off. I've lost it and it's found me again, up and down the hill.
Yeah.
I was overweight as a child. I remember using food a lot. And it wasn't until, that moment when you make a decision to do something, it's like a switch. You click it in your head from a smoker to a non-smoker, which has been my experience, or from a drinker to a non-drinker, or in my case, from a non-BLE to a BLE. And when I made that decision in that split second, a part of me got really loud and it felt like it was screaming and it felt like it was going to die, like this is life-threatening.
Yeah. And
I just think whatever stars, whatever universe, whatever was out there in play, is that I knew what to do with that. It was through my training and my own experience and my own level of understanding in IFS that I went in and internal in that moment and worked with that part to help it release the pain and move it into the joy that then came of the freedom of knowing what to do next. What's the next step? What's the next bite? What do we do next about this feeling that gave me such a revelation into BLE? And I think that's why I haven't had any cravings.
That's amazing.
Because I've dealt with it.
When we talked earlier before now, when you mentioned something like this, that you had a revelation to me, I immediately thought we have like two threads here, because I want so much to know how you started the actual food program. But I'm so interested, and I'm sure everyone is, in what this looks like to be able to overcome what's kind of sounding like grief in this loud part of yours, or whatever the personality, however I don't know how you describe the part, but the one that is saying, no, don't do that, too scary, or whatever the message is. So let's talk first about the actual going through the system of going from non-BLE to BLE. You got the Audible read. You read through Audible. I did. In short order, you understood it scientifically, all of that. How did you step into it, like a boot camp or what?
So first of all, I got the book and I started. After having read the book, it comes with a PDF on Audible, and off I went. I was confident that I could do this now. And it wasn't until probably 2 or 3 weeks later, looking at the website going, oh, they're offering a short course. I think it was $14 back then to do the 2 weeks, 14-day thing. And I thought, oh, I'll have a look at that. You know, I love learning. It's one other of my addictions is learning. And I don't think I'm going to stop that addiction, but I got on the website and I started it. I never actually completed it. I really didn't feel the need. I felt like I had what I needed. And so moving through the first part of the 3 or 4 days of detoxing, because I was a binger of royal grounding. I was so good at binging. I could have had a PhD in it. You know, it would be bag after bag after bag after bag, usually rolling from sweet to savoury through the whatever time period I had that allowed me to stay in isolation and keep the food rolling. I was in a mess, an absolute mess. And so you can imagine.
Yeah. And may I ask, you know, as you're saying, to get this kind of out of the way, I know you're 5'6" and you go by kilograms.
I do.
So it was.
Shall I calculate? I'll calculate the weight for you. So in kilograms, I think it was about 130 kilograms, but my scale kept clanging on the end of the scale with such a noise, I really couldn't tell. And I think I was probably too chicken to jump on another scale. So if we put in 130 multiplied by 2.2, that gives us 286 pounds.
Okay. So that was your weight, your weight and height. And you are in what kind of health at this point?
Weight-wise?
What kind of health were you in?
Oh, back then, oh God, I could hardly move. I was stiff and sore and not sleeping and cranky. And I think it was it got to be like a slow form of suicide, one bite at a time. And I felt if I didn't do something, I'd just move closer toward that death, the slow.
But you weren't
nasty.
Dieting, though. You weren't dieting much. Okay,
no,
I thought that you had done keto at some point.
I'd been vegan. I'd done keto. I'd high protein, Atkins, you name it. I'd done lots of things and lost weight beforehand, but it found me again.
Okay.
Not my fault, of course.
No.
But it found me again.
Well, and so for me,
I knew I could succeed.
They just weren't sustainable. A lot of the things.
Yeah, and the one thing that's different is connection with people. That's why days like this, you know, for people hearing is so vital. But connecting one-to-one or one to, like my lovely mastermind sisters, they've been such a huge part. And can I just give a shout out to Deb, who's on today? If it wasn't for Deb, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be as successful either, because Deb was one of the people that hosted the Tuesday night chat in Australia. And when I started, I found it, goodness knows how, jumped on, and Deb and at that stage Jackie were there giving all their hearts and all their support. And if it wasn't for that, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have sustained the work that I got through.
And I've said this a number of times that it wasn't for lack of trying. All of these, all the ones that you named, I've been there and done that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I found is that not only was there all the chatter in my head about just diet chatter, like what am I counting this week? Literally, calories, points, carbs. You know, you name it, minutes of exercise, whatever I was really trying to beat myself with. There was that part, but it was such a lonely process. You're doing it alone and trying to figure out how to do everything alone. Unless I never got into a place where you go in and check in with a doctor or something. There's that, but when I found community, it made just my world opened up. You mean there are other people like me, and they're cheering each other on, and they're truly being successful. There are then and now pictures, and they're not afraid to show it. They weren't being boastful. They're giving you hope is really what it was, that this can work for you too. But you did mention you are not feeling well. You are just really not moving much. What kind of detox did you go through with that?
It was nasty. But having been through keto, I knew keto flu, which has its own symptoms, but the symptoms, it took about 3 days, and I was sleeping, like knocked out, cold, absolutely sleeping, no energy, grumbly tummy, the whole body aches and pains and sweating. Oh God, I was a mess. But I expected something, because I had been on such a diet of chemicals and preservatives and colorings and non-food things, basically.
No kidding.
You can't call it food that I was eating. So something had to react, because it wasn't getting those things anymore. It was just getting fresh, whole food, the way we're supposed to eat.
I was shocked with my own. For me, I felt it in my legs at night. For some reason, I don't know why, my legs were throbbing. And the only thing I could figure later on talking with people is that I carry a lot of weight in the backside and my hips and legs. And so there's extra fat there. And fat, you store the toxins in your fat. And if I'm not putting more of that junk in it, it's eventually being released into my blood. I think this is how it works. But I was definitely feeling it way more than 3 days. But, I had a lot of weight to lose. So, well over that. And I'm very glad to be there. So you did the 14-day challenge. You went through your detox. And you said something that really piqued my interest, the way that you handle your vegetables. Can you talk about that?
I've read a book recently. I think it was something about a gut. I can't remember the name of it. But he suggested that you have 30 plants every week. And that's some variety. But I worked it out that it's not that hard. The other thing he suggests is to have things that are currently in season. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Right.
They would be at their peak, although frozen vegetables are just as good as fresh. So we've discovered, for those who don't get a chance to have the fresh ones. But that variety is really important. So although I have oats and yogurt and berries in the morning, and hummus and veggies at lunch, they're different veggies. They're different berries. So I can change them around. I've even considered making hummus from things like black beans. So that will be my next adventure, I think, into making hummus from something other than a chickpea, which I believe is easy to do.
But you don't make your own hummus right now, right? You just purchase
No, I'm in efficiency mode at the moment because I work full-time for Lifeline here. And then I also see people from 5:30 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, mostly BLEs. Then, efficient and effective is what I'm after.
So you have your yogurt and berries for the breakfast. You always have raw veggies for lunch. And you try to have 30 different kind of vegetables and fruit within a week.
Yep.
Which is absolutely amazing. All the rainbow, all the colors, all
it
the different
is.
fibers. Somebody mentioned Fiber Fueled. I don't know if that's the book.
Great book. But, okay. Great book, yeah.
So that might be it. So someone in the chat said Fiber Fueled. So that may be something to look at. Okay, so that is really interesting. Anything else that you do specifically for your food plan?
So I tell you what, I use hummus every day, but often differently. So I might take, and I'm obviously talking from my Australian experience here, but I'm pretty sure you guys are way ahead of us in terms of prepped food. So I'll go into my grocery store and they'll have bags of shredded veggies, shredded lettuce and shredded cabbage and whatnot. I'll take one of those and hummus and I can make soup out of them.
Oh, wow.
So it doesn't have to be raw veggies. If it's cold and you really want soup, you can add those two together with a dash of some spice mix that has no sugar in it. And all of a sudden you've got a tasty soup. You could, instead of using water, you could use chicken stock. You could add some tomatoes, for freshness. And there's so many different things that you can throw together really simply and really quickly that have a lot of different content in it, but are not triggering, not exciting food. But for me, it's exciting because I know I'm feeding myself the right fuel. That makes sense.
Well, I have a question about when you said the hummus in the soup. I've never considered that. So
yeah, no.
So you put that with the chicken stock and you just add your vegetables. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you, with your busy schedule, do you pack the day before?
I do. I tend to prep one day a weekend. I mostly don't need to prep the breakfast because it's quite quick anyway. And I often zap it a little bit to thaw the berries out because they're usually frozen. But lunch gets packed generally on a Sunday afternoon into either Ziploc bags or glass containers, depending what's available at the time. And I also weigh out the hummus as well. So in the morning, I just pick up an apple or some grapes or something like that, and my bag of salad veggies and my hummus, and I'm off. Quick and easy.
And you don't think about food the rest of the time, right?
No, yeah, I don't. I think it gives me solace to know that I'm well cared for. This is all the food I need. And I'm still on the weight loss plan. I still have about 10 kilos to go, so 20-ish pounds to go. So I'm still having weight loss quantities.
Were you in shock with how fast you were losing in the beginning? I would imagine.
In the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. I would imagine because, when you're saying you're like starting at 280, in the beginning, I felt like I was losing weight like it was a sport. And like I couldn't even keep track of what size I was in for a little while. And then I got a little cocky and I came to a realization like, okay, get with the groove here. And then I began turtle mode and started going slowly. But I want to bring up something that we talked about privately earlier, and that's about in this mastermind group, because this isn't your first mastermind group, and you did something kind of bold.
I've been in 3 mastermind groups now. The first 2 didn't hold together. The first one particularly dissolved after about, 6 weeks, I suppose. Life got lifey, as they say, and so it was no longer a priority to attend. The second mastermind group was of very different commitment or ability or capacity, or I'm not quite sure how to put it, and I certainly don't mean any harm to anyone in the way I describe it. No. But we were not of the same devotion to BLE, and sometimes
or whatever.
BLE does feel like a bit of a religion at times. So that devotion, that making meaning of it in our lives, I think is what I meant. And so 2 of us were, 2 of us weren't, and so it's very uneven. And we'd often turn up, and the person that was committed, she and I would discuss how we're going and what our plans are and what the barriers might be the following week. And the other 2, I got a sense that they felt shamed because they couldn't stick to what they promised themselves. And so it felt like, to me, like it was damaging for them to attend. They felt like they were committed to a group, so they had to attend. But they weren't committed to their own processes and themselves. And so we dissolved the group. We just thought it wasn't fair to come to a mastermind and expect the level of commitment and then beat yourself up over it. So,
well, I think that's really a brave thing to do. And it's actually with some integrity, I believe, because you're saying right here, it's not about there's good or bad people. That's not it. We are in different walks of our lives. We have things going on. Sometimes other things take a precedent, and they have to in that moment, and you have to give up some things. And so the reason I bring this up is because sometimes we feel we are stuck into something. And when we really listen to the voice inside of us that says, this isn't working out right now. Got to be honest with yourself and others to be able to move on. It's so hard, right? It's so hard. But I just wanted to state that because it's not about good people, bad people. It's about where you are. And sometimes you have to be brave to make a change. And I felt like that was quite amazing that you did that. And so,
it was hard to bring up. It was. But once I brought it up, the rest were in agreement. It was like everyone felt the same, but no one was game enough to talk about it.
Right. And you know what I think also can happen when it's kind of in a strained situation, that someone bringing it up can at least rejuvenate. It can actually rejuvenate the group. Like, no, I don't want to give it up. What can we do to strengthen our group? You know, so again, being honest where you are, not in a mean way, just like, this is what I'm feeling. Anyway, I just thought that I would bring that up because I think that it's a situation that others come into, and it's worth, exploring. If you're not feeling right, it's a possibility to get back on track with others who are more committed or just in the same wavelength. So anyway, you have this huge, what you call vital connection going on with your mastermind, with your chat group. And you said one part too is that you don't look at going in the ditch. It's not a good day, bad day. You talk about the judgments. What did you mean by that?
So I hear a lot of people use the language of I've been good or I've been bad. There's a lot of internal judgment going on. And what I encourage my clients to talk about is I'm focused or I'm unfocused. So we talk about facts rather than judgment. If you can talk about facts, I'm focused on bright line. These are the lines, I can prove it. See, there's the calendar. I'm unfocused, and the calendar reflects that. Good and bad is just a judgment. And in my eyes, there is no one that's bad. It's like Dick Short's book. There's no parts that are bad. They're all trying to do their best for us. And sometimes they do extreme things, but it's from a place of love. So the good, the bad, it's not useful. It's focused, unfocused, and there might be other words out there that we could use as well when we stay bright. And so I think the idea of staying bright is useful, but there's no opposite to it. So, yeah, that's my way of having I'm on track, I'm off track.
Yeah, and actually just today, I revisited something that I had mentioned in a Zoom a few months ago. And the subject came up about that I had gone off track during the day unintentionally. It was a split-second decision to dive into a gift that somebody dropped off. I mean, it was instantaneous. And so I went off track, and then I asked my husband to just, hide this. Of course, I know where to look. So I found it again. But then I came to a realization that I don't have to keep going like this the rest of the day. And I made the decision. Of course, now I earned a heart on my calendar, a heart meaning that I still love myself, but the day was not quite bright. Okay. But what the heart represented was integrity of even claiming the day. And no matter if we are 100% or not, we're still in the game. We're still in the day. We're not going to just shove that, well, that day doesn't count because it's bad.
Mm.
So when you talked about judgments with me earlier, it made me think of we have good day, bad day too. I think all days are good. They might have things that are unpleasant in the day, but the day in itself, we still woke up. We're still here. That's pretty good, but unfortunate things can happen in each day, and decisions that we weren't planning on making can be there. So just bringing that in with the whole judgments thing. And I want to get into also the judgments ourselves, and this brings us to the parts work that you do. So the internal family systems, IFS, you got into it in, I think you said 2019. But prior to that, you were a counselor for many years.
Yeah, many years. 1995, I started counselling as a sexual assault counsellor with adult survivors of childhood sexual assault. And I've been counselling off and on since then. And then 4 years ago, I joined Lifeline here in Toowoomba, in Queensland. And I work with their gambling help service, funny enough. So people in addictions.
Okay.
And there's a whole set of addictions that seem to come together. It's gambling and alcohol and substance. It can be sleep and reading and work. It could be sex and pornography. There are so many different ways that an addiction can display itself.
I've never heard of addiction to sleep.
Yeah. Because it allows people to numb out, to dissociate, to leave. Yeah.
That they don't want to be, that it's a form of isolation, maybe?
Yeah, getting away from life, you're switching off.
Okay, so for someone who's brand new to parts work, can you just kind of give us the intro of what are we looking at? And I know that there are names for our parts, but
sure.
Parts work in the beginning, I'll be very honest with you, I thought it was kind of like woo-woo, like, ooh, I'm actually kind of scared to even think about this, because I was thinking of it like multiple personalities and all that, but that's not really what it's about, is what I'm learning.
Well, actually, it is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
So there's a little 7-minute video that Dick Schwartz has done, which actually talks about that. He says it's exactly the same as multiple personality, except the difference is alters, as we call them in dissociative identity disorder, which is multiple personality. They've been like blown apart from each other. They don't communicate, and they don't often communicate with the self. Just through the level of trauma they've been through, there's a disconnect. It's a cutoff. Whereas in us, most of us, some of us do have DID, and I work with those as well. What happens is we'll have a part that says, now, if you dress well for this interview, you're more likely to get the job. So this is a manager who plans your wardrobe so that you can succeed. So that's a manager. On the other hand, is another part that says, oh, that's boring. I'm feeling a bit nervous. I think I'll go and have something else. And that something else could be binging television. It could be reading. It could be looking at the scenery, daydreaming. It could be food. So you've got the two sides of things trying to do the same thing, which is to keep you away from the hurt part that's underneath. They tend to be young. They tend to hold the pain of a moment or a situation. It's like a little time capsule, all locked up. And it's operating as if today is the day that they were harmed. So if they were harmed at 4, I'll give you an early one, 18 months. A really common time for a child to be harmed, totally no malice involved at all, potty training.
Really?
And any mother would know this because do you remember opening nappies and going, oh, that's terrible? Now, there's no malice involved in that. Just the nappy is awful. What a terrible surprise.
Diapers?
Diapers, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes. You open the diaper and then there's this awful mess.
Yes.
Right? What a child reads is the look on your face. Now, they're not thinking, oh, I've dirtied myself. It's what's in the diaper. They're thinking it's me.
Okay.
Because up until about 7, the little one believes they are the center of the world and the adults around them. So if mummy and daddy aren't happy, must be something to do with me. If a baby is left to cry 2 minutes longer than it believes it should, it starts to lose hope. But who knows how long that really is? You know, I have 3 children and I'm pretty sure their hope level was very different among the 3. So in my terms, I don't use blame or malice or anything like that. I say babies are born with needs. Parents have capacities. And sometimes they meet the baby's need. Sometimes they fall short and sometimes they surpass it. We don't know how that's going to look and what it looks like in the world.
Right.
And babies don't come with manuals, right? They're all different.
Right. Or time clocks. Like, okay, this is how long I can cry before I start losing hope.
Exactly. Yeah. So if a baby is left and it cries and it's too long for that baby, they might start to think, oh, I don't really matter. It's about me. Something wrong with me. I'm not good enough, or all of those sorts of things start to build inside of us. And it's those little wounds that get encapsulated, shoved aside into the dark, don't go there, and the managers pop up and the protectors pop up and the firefighters pop up to then, no, you don't want to go there. Come and look at this pretty thing. Come and do that job really well. You know, if you do that job really well, they think you matter. Don't feel that. Go over there and do something interesting. So they're both trying to keep you away from that original pain. So my job as a parts detective, because sitting with a client, they will have different sorts of feelings come through their body all the time. And my job is to help them open space, be open-hearted, to have compassion for themselves, but also for the part that we're dealing with. So that if you've got a harsh inner critic, let me see, I've got some cards here which I use sometimes for clients. Let me see, harsh inner critic, here we go. How about her? She's a pretty critical kind of person, right? That's a harsh inner critic. So if we hold her, what would be the opposite of her might be, so this person believes that we have to be nice, so therefore we'll just do what's lovely and what's cute, and we might do something spiritual. We won't feel the feelings. We'll go and do whatever spiritual practice that we believe in and not feel the feelings. Okay? So you can imagine those two not liking each other very much. Might be judgmental on this side, and it might be laissez-faire, airy-fairy, off with the fairies on this side, opposites. But underneath those two is this little one. And that's the one that they're protecting from us and us from them, because they still believe that this is the day that's in operation, when she was embarrassed, harmed, made fun of, all those sorts of things. And so the two protectors that I showed you, these two, are doing their jobs so that we won't feel the pain again.
So let me kind of say that back to you in my not educated life of parts. So what I'm hearing you say is going back to the interview, right? You have a manager part who is saying, okay, Karen, let's get our wardrobe set. We want to look good for this job interview.
Mhm.
You know, ship shape, get off the chair and go get the work done to get ready for this.
Mhm.
The other one's saying, I don't think I want to do that. That is too much work. And, I should just take it easy and relax and clear my mind before this interview. Totally opposing parts.
Yeah.
And because they're covering up for the child within, is
Mhm.
that right? The one
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah.
want to be embarrassed. So the one
Yeah.
that's kind of easygoing is saying this way.
Mhm.
Maybe you'll even be late for it. You won't have to be embarrassed. You just won't even get it. This one
Mm.
is saying you're going to have to overperform. I don't know. Is
Mhm.
that kind of close?
Yeah, you've got it right, because the feeling, which is the driver, is the anxiety, right? So a little one, an exile's coming up with anxiety, and the firefighter responds by taking us away into something else, distraction,
Right.
and then the manager takes us away by planning so that that will never happen again. Yeah,
So
you got it right.
is the firefighter ever the hidden child or the part
Not
that,
often,
okay. So
not often.
what are you finding mostly for people like me, who I also was going for the food, to cover up what I call throat hunger?
Mm,
Am I just covering up like something scary? Is that
possibly.
okay?
Yeah, it's a possibility. It could be a feeling of something that is too scary to get into, or there's fear, there's anxiety, there's sadness. Sometimes it's too sad to get into. You don't want to get into that. So let's do this. Let's plan so that that doesn't happen again. Yeah, there's a
And
whole
maybe
variety of things.
procrastinate so that you don't get into those
Hey,
painful,
you'll never fail if you don't do it, right?
right? Louise is saying insecurity, like
Mm.
covering up insecurity.
Yep,
Like if you
yep, for
don't
sure.
do the work, you won't be judged because the work
That's
is not,
right.
the work won't be judged. You might be judged.
Mm, mm.
So
You can't fail if you don't do.
so if somebody, and I know, you're very busy, but you
Oh,
you do offer some BLE
mm.
work. Can you tell us about that? Because
Yeah.
you've
So
had some like group things too.
mhm. I've just put some more in the calendar actually. So I try and offer as many services for free as possible. So for BLE people, I offer 3 individual sessions, and that helps them understand what parts work is, because it can be complex, um, and but for others it's simple. So for the first session, we actually go through a set of slides, PowerPoint presentation, and talk about it as a concept, because for some it's hard to even imagine that there's parts in there, and it might be a bit woo woo, and it might be a bit scary, or it might go against some belief they have. So I think it's important that we get on the same page of me understanding where they're coming from and their understanding where their parts are coming from. Okay, so that's the important thing. And then for the next couple of sessions, we can work out with their system which their parts are most important to start with. Because it's my belief that I'm just a tour guide and their system knows better than I do. I have no list to tick off. There's no need for me to drive anything. It's actually really important for me to be in self energy, and self energy is compassion and connection and clarity of mind, courage and confidence, creativity and calmness. So
We
it's,
have a comment here that Chrissy's saying, I feel my parts are running the show and really getting in the way of
yeah,
the food a food
Yeah.
sobriety. Is that
Yeah.
what you hear a lot?
A lot. It's
what do
not
you,
unusual.
and is there normally one reason or an underlying reason for that?
Yeah, there is. There's often a situation that happened where the parts were given a job. So there are no bad parts. It's only what they do that can be extreme and make it life messy for us. And when we figure out what's going on underneath, what's the pain underneath, what happened, what could have the adults done in that situation? And if there was no one in your life that could have saved the situation, then what can you do now as an adult that wasn't done then? So, for instance, if there's the little one that's feeling not heard or seen, then you can now hear it and see it and accept it and then speak for it like an adult would to be protective. You can do the adult stuff now that wasn't done as a child. And once that little one is released from the burdens and the beliefs, you know, the beauty of it, once the beliefs are dropped, and they're literally dropped, unloaded, we can burn them, set them on fire, throw them in a river, bundle them up and dig a hole, whatever it takes, imaginatively, to suit that particular little one. The next part of the job is that I ask them to look around their feet, these little ones, and find the qualities that got dropped when they were so overwhelmed or so frightened. And often they'll pick up courage or confidence, or they'll pick up creativity again. So, you know, the things that you were born with, the potential that you were born with is regathered. And we can then produce that as an adult, even though we haven't been able to do it for years.
Wow.
It's a really lovely process. Yeah.
I mean, I would think that would take a long time to get to that point, does it?
Sorry, no, it doesn't. The quickest I've done is 20 minutes. The longest I've done is probably 3 sessions. So, no, not long at all. A client of mine, she said, I've been in talk therapy for 20 years and you just got through in 2 sessions what I couldn't do in 20 years. Sorry, it's the model. It's nothing to do with me, I'm sure. It's just the model.
You know what? I don't know if this is the time to say it, but I know that I had and I mentioned this to you, I had a personal situation myself, not in a parts thing, but realizing there was a part of me that was this little child who had been called lazy one day by my mother. And I loved my mother. I just loved my mother. But this stayed with me all through the years, like this word. And one day I was reading a book. It was a friend's book. Stop Whining, Start Writing is the book she wrote, Trisha McDonald. And in there is a chapter about this inner critic part, but it could be a real person who is a critic. Like, why are you, you're not good enough, whatever. And she said to just, write it down, who it is, what they said, crumple it up, throw it out. Well, I couldn't do that. That was my mother, who had said that. I had way too much respect and love, but I did a little stick figure on a sticky note, a big person and a small person. And this is how much love I have for her. I didn't even want to say the words coming out of her mouth like that they were bad, because I love her. So I wrote YAL, meaning you are lazy. And as soon as the little child saw that in the stick figure, I said, Mom, you're tired. Like, it just became a realization, putting myself as the child. Mom, you're tired and I love you. And it just like totally freed me. After 50 years, it totally freed me to never again think badly of myself in that way. In a split moment of probably telling me for the 100th time to go clean my room, she said something like that. and I internalized it. And putting it on paper for the first time and seeing myself as a child, it was shocking how clear it came to me. So I can only imagine that these parts that are revealed as you go through the process with someone, that this can just be huge. And I see here in the chat, someone saying it's an amazing process. And this comes from a non-believer who thought parts work was voodoo. And then another Janet goes, oh my goodness, I thought the same thing. So, I mean, that's my little story, that I wasn't with a counselor, but just doing a small exercise like that. And I did not expect to see that, but it was just doing the work. And with you as a guide, I can only imagine that speeds up things a lot to be able to give clarity to people.
Yeah, and the reason it's useful to have a witness, whether it's a trained therapist or a friend even who knows what they're doing, is that we act as parts detectives. We can see when a part slips in who's angry at the other part or afraid of the other part, and we'll gently just ask them to step aside and bear witness if they want to, or go and do something else. Because as we work with the target part opposite us, it's important to have that open-hearted situation, that compassion, connection, curiosity even about the part. And then you can heal. We can only heal self to part. We can't heal part to part. So if we're sitting in another part that's driving us, there's no healing that can happen unless there's self in the room. Sometimes it's myself, but I try and get clients into their own self and heal that way. The other beauty of this method is that quite often people can learn how to do it for themselves, as Everett's been so exposing and showing people. It's
and by
only
Everett,
tough.
you mean Everett Considine?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
Right line eating.
I really appreciate his work in this. And Everett has been very careful staying to the manager and the firefighter role, because they're the ones that we can generally work with by ourselves. It's only those who have training that they can stay in self can then go to that deeper part into the exile. And that's where a witness, a trained person, should be with you for the first couple of times. But otherwise, once you get the hang of it, as I have, you can do it for yourself. And
now,
look, I'm no genius.
Is there anybody who should not do parts work?
By themselves, probably quite a few people. It can get messy, for sure. When someone comes to me with a diagnosis, whatever that is, I'm really careful to speak with that person about what it means for them. Sometimes holding a diagnosis is more important than healing.
And so can you give me an example of that, like anxiety, depression, that kind of thing? Or
so depression generally is a part. And I'll speak of the S word. I'll speak of suicide here because it's real. And what the other thing we've discovered is that suicidal thoughts are often just one part. And then once that one part is taken off like a cloak and unblended, then the rest of the system doesn't want to leave the planet. They want to keep living, and this one part can then be healed. So it can be quite beneficial to work with what others see as the difficult people. I've worked with dissociative people. I've worked with people with complex PTSD and borderline personality disorder. There's no particular one that we can't speak with.
okay.
In fact, Dick actually came to develop this process in a disordered eating clinic. That's the background of it.
And when you say Dick, it's Dick Schwartz?
Dick Schwartz.
Okay. And he is the author of the book that you, is it No Bad Parts or is it?
No, but that's
okay.
right.
Okay, because I know you recommended two, Internal Family Systems and No Bad Parts, right? Okay.
I think the no bad parts is more user friendly.
I can't believe how the time is going here, Karen. It's like we could talk about this all night. But in your own personal journey with Bright Line Eating, what would you say have been the non-scale victories? I mean, you came from some pretty high numbers, and if you're within 20 kilos, is it? You
said 20 pounds.
Or 20 pounds. So that's only what, like 10 kilos almost.
Yeah.
So what would you say are the non-scale victories?
Getting my body back, but me getting my balance back. So I can now lift my foot and do my shoes up. I couldn't even bend down to do my shoes up before. So getting my body back, being able to clamber over rocks and through rivers and things that was not in my agenda, not even anywhere near it. So enjoying life with my partner, who's quite active. I think he's a 2 on the scale.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah. My husband's a 1, and that's only because there's no 0.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's quite amazing. In fact, today I mentioned I hit a 35% loss. Okay. Well, on the BMI chart, that looks like 18 little boxes. And I looked at how many boxes Tom has had in his adult life. In his whole adult life, he's been in 3. And that is an amazing blessing, truly. I mean, he hasn't been without all health problems, but that's an amazing blessing to have your weight not going up and down like a jump rope, just all every week. Or just clothes, wearing the same clothes from year to year.
Exactly.
Trust me, he's got clothes he's worn for 15, 20 years.
Yeah, my guy has too.
Just amazing. So sickening. You got your body back. And I would imagine you got a lot of stamina with these long hours that you serve people. Yeah, I'm hearing already, I got to bring you back, Karen. So there's going to be more to talk about with you. I know that, because here we are at the end of the hour, and I have one more question to ask you. What would you say to someone who is considering Bright Line Eating?
I'd say join me. Start your life now. Don't put it off. Just as Nike says, just do it. Because all of the things that you are afraid of are the things that are holding you back. But if you don't do it, can you imagine what life's going to be like?
Yeah. Looking back at the Karen of what was it, January 4th, I know that you just celebrated your 2-year BLE anniversary. 2 years of a total change in your life, and giving your life back. What a great thing to do.
And can I just mention one more NSV, which is the friends I've made. True, real life friends.
Yes, absolutely. Just amazing. Well, Karen, any last words before we go?
In your Facebook page, I'll put a link in there and an explanation of how people can book. That's okay.
That'll be great. Go to
3 free sessions.
Right. Go to
2 free groups.
Yeah.
And there are other things. And for BLE people, it will always be half price. This work is hard enough. So I'd rather take all the barriers away as possible.
Karen. What a gift you are. Thank you so much for coming on tonight and sharing your story and such great information. And I know that our paths will cross again here if you're willing. There's lots of people who would like to have you back. So I'm going to say good night for tonight. And again, thank you. And good night, everybody. Good night. Stay bright. Don't let the bed bug bite. Good night. So, Karen, how would you like to play 3-Question Thursday?
I'd love to.
All right. This has been so interesting about parts work, internal family systems. But I'd like
Mhm.
you to go into more depth. This could be 3 questions really, but could you go into more depth with these 3 parts? Unless there are more, but I think you said firefighter, manager, and exile.
Mhm.
Could you take the one first, firefighter? What is
Mhm.
that part inside of us?
What does it do? It's a distractor. Its whole job is to make sure that the exile doesn't come out of lockup. So it's on guard to see if there's any feelings coming up. And generally, an exile is connected to a group, and at some stage, I've come across a dozen of protectors, firefighters wrapped around one exile. The exile was in a particularly complicated situation, and the situation happened several times, or a number of times. So it had a couple of managers and a couple of firefighters that were very strong and very opposed to each other. So the firefighter being the distractive one, the messy one, the one that overdrinks, the one that overeats, the one that goes out and spends all the money.
Procrastinates too?
And procrastinates too. Yeah,
Got one of those.
absolutely. Yeah, me too. Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah, yeah. That's
that's
the
the
firefighter,
firefighter.
and their idea is, if you can imagine the dog in the movie Squirrel, it's like it's
Yep.
off, it's impulsive, it's driven. Whereas the other side of the equation, the manager, is compulsive. It must do this in order for the world to be right, and it plans forward. So if I can talk about one of my little managers, the 5-year-old going into class late, and the teacher running from the other side of the room and yelling in my face, and I can still see her face. And I got a fright. I got frightened at that stage. And the kids in the class, not that they were the most compassionate bunch, they laughed at me. So I had the fright of her, and then wrapped around that was the embarrassment of being laughed at. And so at that time in my life, one of my parts was given a job as manager. Here, what I want you to do now is to make this girl 5 minutes early for everything. So if I wasn't able to be 5 minutes early, which meant on time in their mind, I would have anxiety up through the roof.
Oh.
It just had to be early, or it wasn't going to be okay. Because of what happened. Walking into the classroom late, yelling teacher, embarrassing kids.
Boom.
And it wasn't till I got to know IFS, and it's very experiential when you're learning. You don't do this theoretically, you do it in practice on self. And I got to know her, and she was just trying to do the right thing by me. She didn't want me to get yelled at and embarrassed again.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
this was the anxiety that would come up.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the exile part?
Yeah. So the exile that I dealt with when I decided to do BLE was a 4-year-old. And
this is your own.
this is my own. She grew up, she's adopted. I'm adopted. She came to the family at 2 weeks of age as a baby. And the family she came to had an older brother for her. So another adopted boy who was about 2.5 years older than me.
Okay.
Anyway, he's a meanie. He's a bully. He's a nasty person. Still is, actually. But back then he was quite brutal. And unfortunately, my dear parents had no view of this at all, had no idea. So in other words, the little 4-year-old wasn't seen or heard in the need that she had to be seen or heard. When I talk about needs and capacities,
Yes.
yeah, she had a need to be seen and heard, and the parents had no capacity to do that for her. So food worked. So in the work I did, I found her sitting on the back steps of my house as a child with an NMF in her hand, and she was gobbling her feelings. She was really full on into the food. And it was such an overdose at that stage that it made her feel sick, physically sick. But the next time it happened, she went back to the food because it was reliable. It was there, and she felt like she was being attended to. And so this was a little one that thought, and the managers around her that thought, if I take the food away, she's got nothing. The feelings were so intense that how would she deal? Anyway, the process was that I got to know the protectors above her, and they recognised me as an adult and I can deal. And so I went down to talk to her and soothe her and cuddle her and release her from the beliefs that she didn't matter. It was quite intense, actually. We had a wonderful bonfire, getting rid of all of those beliefs. And she picked up the qualities of compassion for herself and clarity of mind and confidence. So in picking those up, it's changed my life. And here I was at 63, making life-changing work within myself. And from that day on, knowing that I do matter has been such a life changer, because I don't need to people please anymore. I can turn people down and going, no, I don't have time for that. Or I can't do that now. Can I do that later? All sorts of things have been made possible because I know I matter. So is that the sort of thing you mean?
That is so amazing. So I lied, because this was going to be first question, second, third with those 3 parts. But I want to ask you another question. And now I'm forgetting what it was. Oh, I know. You mentioned earlier that there's a book that everybody should read.
Oh, yes.
What is that?
Yes. It's The 4 Agreements, and it's by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I'll put a link in to the Facebook page. Okay. It is fabulous. Can I tell you about the 4 Agreements?
Yes.
It'll be short. All right. The first one is, and I'm reading from this to make sure I get it right, be impeccable with your word. And his reasoning is your word is the power that you have to create. What you say has ripples throughout the world, but also internally. And I read this, oh gosh, I must have been very young, a long time ago. And yet it's still, why I love it, it still meshes with my values and my ethics in the world and what I'm learning more and more. Parts work even it meshes with. The word is force, and the power you have to express it and communicate it either to others or to yourself is huge. But it talks about being impeccable, keeping your word. It talks about not gossiping. It's those sorts of things that are so important. Okay.
Yes.
The next one is don't take anything personally. What someone says about you is actually all about them. Oh. So if I say, Noreen, you're looking beautiful today.
There you
can
are.
say thank you. You can say thank you, but you must realize that that's through my experience of beauty, what my judgment is about beauty, and what I believe is a good look. This is all about me.
It's about you.
It is. So you can imagine if it's not a compliment, but some other type of word, it's all about the other person.
Wow.
And the filters they look through and the way they view the world, their upbringing, what's important to them, all those sorts of things.
Wow. That says a lot.
This is life-changing, like I said. If we can live this way, so much freedom. The next one is don't make assumptions. Take the time to check in with someone. So I heard you say this. Is this what you meant? Because we can hear things and then make a whole story about them that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
It does take a bit of courage sometimes to actually ask those follow-up questions, but it's really, really worth it.
Wow.
And even if you're checking in with arrangements that have been made, just double check. So am I right? This is what we agreed to. Double check those sorts of things. And the final one is always do your best. Now, which means if you're having a great day, do your best. If you're having a poorly day, do your best. And the whole reason is that there'll be no regret.
Right.
There'll be no looking back and go, oh, I could have been better. I could have done differently. It's different. Your best will be different when you're healthy, opposed to being sick, opposed to being sober, opposed to being drunk, opposed to being in the food, opposed to being out of the food. Do your best.
Yeah.
That's it.
And if things aren't bright on your best, you give yourself
Then,
a heart. Have integrity about the day and just move on. You did your
and speak gently to yourself.
wow.
Yep.
Karen, wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story, your information. We're going to have your information in the Starting Out Bright private group on Facebook. So people go over there, and you can also look in the slideshow if you're looking at this on YouTube, and you'll see Karen's Inner Harmony website there too. So thank you so much. And thank you for playing 3-Question Thursday.
That was fun. Thanks so much.
Just such a delight to get to know you. I appreciate it. So thanks again. And thank you, everyone. Stay bright.
Bye all.
Good night.